Welcome to another movie plot and enjoy the memories. It begins during the American Civil War with the Confederacy participating in quite the immoral behavior. A cavalryman named Jonah Hex refused to burn down a hospital, so he became a deserter and killed his best friend Jeb during the escape. When the war's over, Jonah finds himself a family to settle down with, but his commanding officer Quentin Turnbull tracks him down for revenge. Jeb was his only son, so Turnbull ties up Jonah and forces him to watch as his right-hand man Burke burns down his house with his own family still inside. The Confederate general then brands his face with his initials QT and says that it's to always remember him by, but then kills him. Contradiction aside, a Native American medicine man finds Jonah and brings him back to life with a few minor adjustments. As a result, Jonah acquired the ability to commune with the dead and used it to track down Turnbull, but he inconveniently died in a hotel fire. Turning to bounty hunting to satisfy his hunger for vengeance, one day Jonah visits the town of Stunk Creek to turn in 3 dead outlaws, 4 if you also count the one that he had to scrape up into a bag. The crooked mayor has no intention of paying the reward and instead tries to claim the bounty on Jonah's head for himself, but he can sometimes slip bullets. Using dual saddle-mounted Gatling guns to send his horse deaf and some poor teller running for the hills, Jonah mows down the mayor and lacking police force. The moment the sniper's body hits the ground, some random bystander tries to steal his shoes but is shot dead by a deputy that was hiding in a coffin for some reason. Once eradicating everyone with an IQ, our anti-hero collects the bounties he's owed and appoints this handsome young chap the new sheriff. It's short-lived, as Jonah then blows up what looks like the entire town of Stunk Creek as a pretty lousy "you're welcome" on his way out. In another part of the country, a train carrying soldiers and some ridiculously oversized cannons is being transported somewhere. The still-living Turnbull's posse orchestrate a train robbery in which 2 wearing explosive vests hold the soldiers back with fear to steal the weapons. Waiting up ahead on the tracks is Burke to then blow up the soldiers alongside all of the civilian passengers that were foolishly traveling alongside this. With the help of a corrupt official named Adleman, the leader learns the location of the final piece in his sinister yet twist-free plan. They steal a crate of chemical orbs from a once highly secured location and were shown their destructive power on some poor unfortunate one-horse town. Turnbull orders the launch of delay-action bombshells from those silly cannons into the streets. Then when the residents go to investigate, a single Dragon Ball gets launched, triggering the shells that turns the entire town into a large mushroom cloud. At the White House, Lieutenant Grass informs President Grant about the superweapon and how royally screwed they all are. They have no idea where in the country he'll strike, but presume it to be at the centennial celebrations on the upcoming 4th of July. Grant instructs Grass to go out and enlist the help of Jonah, which says a lot about the president's confidence in his own men. They find the bounty hunter at a saloon where he spends the night with a working girl named Lilah who doesn't mind the look of melting flesh. They spend the whole time talking about his scars, as that's basically his whole personality, and we fade to black before needing to increase the rating. The next morning, Lilah begs Jonah to take her away from this place, but he pulls out the brooding "everyone around me dies" speech. As he departs, Lieutenant Grass's man Evan enters to conscript Hex into the military, but he's happy to join anyway when hearing that Turnbull's still alive. He travels to the encampment where Grass shows Jonah the Army's sophisticated network of intelligence, which is just some soldier electrocuting himself with a telephone wire. They've also captured one of Turnbull's posse from the train robbery, but he was rude enough to die on them during their interrogations. It just so happens that Jonah has a solution and resurrects the dead to ask it some questions, but needs to maintain physical contact. The fresher the corpse, the quicker they burn, so Caged Dwellington reveals that he was recruited by someone running a fight club out of South Carolina. Jonah puts soil on the man's head to relieve his pain like he's a potato, and once contact is broken he reverts back to his lifeless condition. Apparently only Jonah sees the dead resurrect, as to Lieutenant Grass it appeared like he was just speaking with a motionless corpse. The bounty hunter rides to the gladiators' circus where some large fighter appears to have all the confidence in the world, until realizing that Smeagol over here drools acid, and it becomes a struggle for survival as the gladiator even tries to escape the arena. Jonah has a casual conversation with his old Colonel Slocum, but he refuses to reveal Turnbull's location and tells the Necromancer to ask the man's dead son. It's not a bad idea, so when they try to claim the bounty on his head, Jonah overpowers the goons and throws their boss into the pit with Snake Boy. The bounty hunter then gets a dog when he rescues it from abuse, but it just follows him around and doesn't come in from the sidelines to help or anything. Burning down the circus as he departs, Jonah travels to a cemetery to resurrect the corpse of his former best friend and Turnbull's son Jeb. He isn't too happy about being murdered and needs to be held down before Jonah can resurrect him without a fight. Once he's calm, Jonah apologizes for killing Jeb, who never liked his father anyway, and reveals Turnbull's location with the intention of getting him killed. He warns the bounty hunter that they have plans for him in the afterlife before returning to his crispy-like state. Jonah then visits an armorer named Smith who supplies him with all of the weapons and doohickeys that he could ever need. Under cover of darkness he sneaks inside Fort Resurrection, or rather just walks straight through the front doors and right up to Turnbull's blueprints. It's for an ironclad warship that he explains to Burke was designed for the US military, but they refrained from building it for being too powerful. After that highly unlikely story, Jonah chases down Turnbull with a brisk walk while killing several of his men with explosive crossbows. He allows Turnbull to escape due to his insistence on never running and gets shot by Burke for not using his previously established abilities. Igniting a box of dynamite to distract the Irishman instead of just shooting him in the face, Jonah can suddenly move fast and flees on horseback. When the sun rises, Turnbull decides to hit Jonah where it hurts and sends the psychotic Burke to bring him something that the bounty hunter quotes loves. Naturally that's Lilah, as we haven't seen him show interest in anything else, and it couldn't come at a better time since she just had to stick a client. The next is even worse as Burke arrives waving around his knife, but we know he isn't going to use it because he was told to take Lilah alive. Meanwhile, a badly injured Jonah rides all night until he falls off his horse and into a dream sequence where he's covered in dirt. Standing opposite is Turnbull, but even in his own imagination Jonah gets defeated by him and needs to be rescued by his Native American guardian angels. The medicine man performs a ceremony that heals Jonah's wounds with a visual representation of a whole bloody bird climbing out of his mouth. Once recovered, he calmly departs and tells a postal worker to send a telegram lest he get the same treatment as his friend from the beginning. Jonah informs Lieutenant Grass that Turnbull's warship is anchored at Independence Harbor, but they never show up, so this scene's pointless. Jonah's left to walk straight into the harbor by himself, and this time his lack of any discretion gets him ambushed by Burke. They go back and forth with the Irishman getting the better of the exchanges until he's finally about to kill Jonah, and then he just can't shut up. Since he's no stranger to fire, Jonah gains an elemental buff and fights back until saying that this is for his wife and shoving Burke's head into a propeller. He's not done yet and brings him back from the dead just to say that this one's for his son and incinerates his body completely. As Jonah prepares to shoot Turnbull, he spots his assassin and uses Lilah as a hostage to force him to surrender. Like any good villain, Turney reveals his plan to simply sail on Washington, D.C. and obliterate the capital where Smith and his family stand in the firing line. Of course Turnbull doesn't kill Jonah, as that would be way too easy, and just restrained him alongside Lilah where he could possibly escape. Which they do immediately because Lilah has max level lock-picking skills, and the two begin searching the ship for Turnbull. He's currently putting a bullet in the back of Adleman's head because obviously before popping up on deck as they barrel towards DC. His war machine produces the largest Gatling gun ever unnecessarily put to film and fires cannonballs from a conveyor belt fed from the below deck. Lieutenant Grass and his sidekick Evan sail out to meet Turnbull in the harbor, but are instead greeted by one of the orbs to the face, which lays waste to the intercepting army. They then open fire on the Capitol building, causing the people to scatter from the celebration and filling the streets with unactivated bombs. Jonah goes upstairs to find Turnbull, while Lilah remains down to hold off the guards, as she's apparently an efficient marksman and fighter as well. Jonah and Turnbull fight, but they immediately tumble down into the engine room where our hero winds up flat on his back yet again. Luckily Lilah loses her next fight because she drops an axe beside Jonah, which he uses to get away and delay the chemical orb from being launched. He then shoves Turnbull's neck into a giant gear before saving Lilah from the dude that's been standing on her for the past 10 minutes. As the orb ignites in the engine room, killing Turnbull, the duo leap overboard, avoiding the explosion that seems to follow Jonah wherever he goes. Sometime later, President Grant awards Jonah with a pardon for any crimes that he's committed and offers him a job as sheriff of the entire country. He declines the silly offer but assures the president that if they ever need him then they know where to find him. I guess that's a reference to Lilah's bedroom, who's waiting outside to depart the White House together with her scarred-up savior. In the final scene, Jonah visits Jeb's grave to apologize for killing his father despite obviously not being sorry. And the movie ends.